A couple of questions I want to ask you. Why did you? I heard your answer to Senator Durbin, but you were a sitting federal judge, and I know some other judges joined you, but you wrote a letter to Columbia saying, because of what I see happening at Columbia, I'll never hire one of your graduates. Why did you do that?
Senator, I was asked to sign the letter. It was indicated over a period of time. And the reason why is because it wasn't simply a student protest that was occurring. It was a protest that was resulting in violent conduct.
Welcome back to the podcast. What we just saw at the Senate Finance Committee hearing wasn't a standard policy debate. It was an absolute exposure of the partisan establishment's ultimate double standard. Senator Bernie Sanders took the gavel trying to paint a newly appointed HHS Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. into a corner over campaign contributions, attempting to frame him as just another compromised Washington player. From a conservative Republican perspective, this clash matters because it completely pulls back the curtain on institutional gaslighting. For decades, the left has claimed the moral high ground on fighting special interests, yet they have actively presided over the absolute corporate takeover of our federal health agencies. Instead of addressing the catastrophic surge in chronic disease, the massive failures of regulatory capture, or the trillion-dollar pharmaceutical lobby, Sanders resorted to cheap transactional gotcha tactics. But RFK Jr. stood his ground perfectly. He completely flipped the script, demanding to know why the committee is so laser-focused on political donations while entirely ignoring the systemic corruption keeping the American people sick and dependent. The moment the establishment's narrative collapsed under the weight of its own hypocrisy, the panic in the room became totally undeniable. Let's roll the tape. If you are ready for honest conservative analysis that shreds the mainstream media narrative and exposes the swamp, hit that like button and subscribe right now.
I want to comment. I think you've just seen some political theater that's been demonstrated here with a lot of people that are up for nominations for the judiciary. I think I'd like to quote Justice Jackson on another point when she was asked about January 6th during her nomination. Quote, "It would be inappropriate to me to publicly weigh into any subject of political debate," end of quote. Senator Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Congratulations, Judge. I think we ought to clear the air here. We all know what's going on. President Trump believes passionately that he won the 2020 election. And you're being asked these questions in hopes you will say that he didn't. Or in hopes that you will say that he did. Regardless of what you actually think, the further hope is that it'll cause the president to twist off and pull your nomination. And that's what's going on here. I'm not saying my good friend doesn't have the right to do that. Some would say it's kind of clever, but I don't think we ought to kid ourselves about what's going on. Number two, my job, I don't, this business of confirming judges has become too much of a shirts versus skins game for my taste. If I could change it, I would, but I can't. Picking somebody for the federal bench is as serious as 4 heart attacks and a stroke. You're there for life. We better get it right. And my job is to be in, as I see it, is to be an equal opportunity antagonist. Now, some would use another A word to describe me. and I realize that. But that's my job. And the two biggest things going for you, Judge, I don't know. You have Richard resume, it's impressive. Or John Hoeven and Kevin Kramer. If they tell me you ought to be on the Court of Appeal, I believe them. Because they understand the role of a United States Senator. There are a couple of questions I want to ask you. Why did you? I heard your answer to Senator Durbin, but you were a sitting federal judge, and I know some other judges joined you, but you wrote a letter to Columbia saying, because of what I see happening at Columbia, I'll never hire one of your graduates. Why did you do that?
Senator, I was asked to sign the letter. It was indicated over a period of time. And the reason why is because it wasn't simply a student protest that was occurring. It was a protest that was resulting in violent conduct.
Well, I know what happened. I guess what I'm getting at is our federal judiciary has lost some of its legitimacy. I'm not laying it at your doorstep, but it has. And so many Americans now feel, because they're told, that judges are just politicians in robes. Okay? They're just mini legislatures. And that's not what our founders intended, and I don't think that's what they are.
That is exactly what a real, uncompromised disruption looks like. Bernie Sanders walked into that hearing room thinking he had the perfect progressive trap ready for RFK Jr. He wanted to use his standard, well-worn stump speech about campaign contributions to imply that RFK Jr. is somehow hypocritical or bought off by the very corporate interests he has vowed to dismantle at HHS. But instead of playing defense, RFK Jr. turned around and dropped a truth bomb that shattered the entire room's composure. Let's look at the sheer hypocrisy of Bernie Sanders' argument. Sanders wants to feign outrage over political donations, but where is his outrage over the multi-billion-dollar revolving door between Big Pharma and federal regulatory agencies? Where is the progressive concern over the fact that our FDA, CDC, and NIH are practically funded and dictated by the very corporations they're supposed to oversee? They don't want to talk about that because the establishment thrives on that exact status quo. When RFK Jr. looked Sanders dead in the eye and essentially asked, "Are you honestly going to ignore the massive trillions of dollar institutional corruption of our healthcare system to focus on campaign finance bureaucracy?" he exposed the entire game. He forced the committee to confront the real pressing emergency, America's skyrocketing chronic disease epidemic, declining life expectancy, and poisoned food and drug supply. Isn't it fascinating how the institutional left suddenly panics when a leader refuses to speak in their pre-approved scripted Washington talking points? From a conservative perspective, what makes RFK Jr.'s performance so incredibly powerful is his unwavering commitment to accountability and limited, clean government. He isn't interested in protecting entrenched bureaucrats or covering for failed federal agencies. He wants to tear down regulatory capture, put an end to corporate welfare, and restore the constitutional objective of protecting public safety and individual liberty over corporate profit margins. The political implications of this clash are massive. The left is completely terrified of a Department of Health and Human Services that focuses on root cause health, transparency, and dismantling the corporate state. Bernie Sanders tried to bully him into compliance, but RFK Jr.'s poise and counterpunch proved that the old political playbook just doesn't work against a populist movement focused strictly on the facts. Watch the full, explosive exchange from the Senate Finance Committee hearing where Bernie Sanders and RFK Jr. clash over institutional corruption. This specific video captures the exact moment the establishment's talking points collapsed under direct pressure from the HHS secretary.